Design and Composition, the Elements of Picture Making. Welcome, this is Charles Bernard. This is the first video on design and composition that you need to begin with, and there are many more within the entire course, so therefore you need to take the entire course to learn all the things that you need to learn about design and composition to master these important subjects. You can't master these subjects by watching just 2 or 3 or 4 videos by only taking part of the course. If you only take part of the course, then you only have a partial knowledge of these important subjects. To get the complete knowledge, you need to take the complete course. And the entire art course consists of the unlimited track 1, 2, 3, and 4. By taking the entire art course, you will be learning all of the fundamentals that will enable you to construct any kind of picture that you can imagine. But without that knowledge of the fundamentals, you really can't do anything. Whatever you do is not going to be based on a sound foundation unless you have a knowledge of the fundamentals and apply them to your work. Throughout this course, you will be learning what design and composition are and what makes a great composition and design. Composition is defined as the combining of forms and space to produce a harmonious whole. But you need to know how to achieve harmony. How is harmony created? Design involves the principles of design that are applied to composition, to the arrangement of forms and space. You'll be learning what the principles of design are and the elements of design. But you need to take things one step at a time. So you begin with this video on design and composition first. And I highly suggest that you follow the order that I have established and not jump around to all sorts of other videos and then back again. You're just going to get confused. You're not going to be able to follow an orderly procedure, which will greatly aid you in understanding all this. Through design and composition, you will be able to create an orderly arrangement. You will organize the material in such a way that will give the viewer of your picture a satisfied sense of order and beauty. But you won't be able to accomplish this until you have learned the fundamentals, which you are learning in this course. The serious art student is one that is concerned more with just the superficial aspects of art, which so many videos deal with that you see nowadays on the internet, where they just show you a procedure to follow, and then you may think, well, this is all I really need to know. Look, I'm painting these beautiful flowers or this mountain or this tree, and all they're really showing you are just techniques and procedures to follow, but that is not what is going to make you an artist. What I'm showing you here is what is going to make you an artist. The best art teaching, the best art schools, the best art teachers are the ones that focus on these elements of picture making that I'm going to be showing you and that you'll encounter throughout this course. That is what is going to make you an artist once you understand these things and are able to apply them to your work. And now I'm going to get right to it and show you what those elements of picture making are, and here they are. Unless you know these elements, understand them, and are able to apply them to your work, you cannot produce anything that is good or even great. All good art, all great art contain these elements of picture making. And to show you how they are used, I'm going to begin with a masterpiece painted by the great Edgar Degas. Many great illustrators, such as Ernie Fuchs, for example, took many things from Edgar Degas' work, such as placing the figure right up to the picture border or even cropping off part of the figure at the picture border.
or using a lot of empty space within the picture. These are things that artists would never have dreamed of doing because it broke the rules that were established. But Edgar Degas had the courage to break those rules. Now what I've done here is I've listed the principles of design, and these are the ones that you usually find when artists talk about the principles of design. Dominance, balance, repetition, unity, harmony, alternation, contrast, gradation. And these principles I will be talking about throughout the course and showing you how they're applied to paintings. And then there are what are called the elements of design. And here again, these are what you usually find listed when the artist talks about the elements of design. They're line, shape, texture, color, size, direction, and value. And again, these are elements that I'll be showing you throughout the course. Now down here, I've listed additional elements of picture making. And they're just as important as these up here. All great art, all good art, contains all or most of these elements of picture making. As you look over all these elements of picture making, you may be thinking to yourself, well, there's really a lot to learn here. But let me assure you that you will be able to learn all of these picture making elements, understand them, and apply them to your work if you really study hard and make a tremendous effort to try to get them into your paintings. If you follow the order of study that I have established in this course, and you take things slowly and step by step, and you do a lot of practice work, you will begin to see these elements of picture making enter into your pictures. You will understand them and you'll remember them, but only if you really apply yourself to learning what these elements are, what they mean, and apply them through a lot of practice work. Art that you respond to, that you are enamored by, that is provocative, that holds your attention, that you're excited about looking at, is art that contains some or all of these elements of picture making. And they have been part of art throughout history. All good or great art contain these elements of picture making. If they don't contain some or all of these elements, rest assured that that art is not considered to be great. Therefore, it is of the greatest importance that you learn about these elements of picture making and are able to apply them to your work. And that's exactly what is going to happen in this course. You're going to be learning about these elements, and if you really are serious about wanting to become a good or great artist, you're going to make every effort to learn about them and try to get them into your work. It's only the serious art student that is going to really take this serious and really wants to learn this. And now it's time to show you a painting by the great Edgar Degas. And here it is. What a beautiful masterpiece this is. It's absolutely breathtaking. When you analyze this great painting, you find that it contains these elements of picture making here. Some artists are only able to get a few of these into their work. Others, more. The more you can get into your paintings, the better the painting is going to be. And Degas was able to get all of them into this painting. It's only by studying the great paintings such as this that you're going to learn the important lessons of what makes a great painting. But you need to know what to look for. And what to look for are the elements of picture making. Now, let me start by going over here where the principles of design are. First of all, I'm going to start off with dominance. Dominance is a very important principle of design because through dominance, another principle is established, which is right over here that I'm outlining, and that is unity. A work of art is largely the result of unity. Without unity, you can't really have what is called a work of art. Unity helps to hold all the parts together, along with another principle, harmony. Harmony and unity help to hold the parts together to make a whole. In other words, they make each piece or part of the picture belong to the whole. Now take a look over here where the elements of design are. These elements of design need to be organized, and they are organized according to the principles of design. By applying each of these principles to each of these elements of design, you create organization. And organization means order. And order and organization is achieved through relationships. For example, dominance would be applied to line, to shape. You'd have a dominant texture, you'd have a dominant color, you'd have a dominant size, a dominant direction, a dominant value. And that's present here in this masterpiece. All these dominances can be seen here. Now, dominance of line, for example, in Degas' work is the straight line. And if you look over here at the edge of the table, and you consider that edge a line, like I'm drawing right there, that's a straight line. And then that straight line is picked up over here by this edge of the table. So that's two straight lines. Then over here there's another straight line. Then there's another straight line over here at this edge of the table, and another straight line here, and another straight line here, and then back here, a straight line, and another one there, and then over here, 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 and of course up here, considering these narrow shapes, lines like that. So you see there are a lot of straight lines. Whenever one kind of line appears more often than another kind of line, you have dominance of line. Now, there's also the principle of contrast. You see right over here where the principles of design are, where I'm outlining the word contrast. So that principle also needs to be applied. And how does Degas do it? Well, he relieves all of these straight lines with curved lines. And you can see the curved lines right here at the edge of her hat, for example, and then over here where this man's hat is, when you outline the contour around like that, you get this curve. Then there's a curve right here where the glass is, right down there. You also have to consider the very small lines or curves like that. And then over here there's a curve. Right there there's a curve. Here there's a curve. Here at the collar of the dress there's a curve. And right up here again where the hat is, that's a curve. Here's a curve. And you can't see it very well, but where the man's back is, right there, there's a curve. Right over here where the woman is, that makes a curve. Now there are additional straight lines as well. For example, where the arm is right there, that could be considered a straight line. Here at the shoulder, there's a straight line. Then down here, where the man's leg is, that makes a straight line. And there's another one right there, you see? Now right here, at the contour of the woman's dress, or edge, that makes a curve. Right over here now, there's a straight line. And let me just redraw that. And then right there, this little object right there has a couple of curves to it. And right over here, there's a straight line. Now you may have noticed that Degas doesn't create perfectly straight lines. They have an irregularity to them. If you look carefully, you'll see that there is an irregularity, like here, for example, right there at the edge. See how the line varies like that? It's not perfectly straight. And that helps to create a loose appearance, so that the work doesn't appear too stiff and labored looking. It gives the painting a more spontaneous feeling, as though the artist just effortlessly painted this picture, which of course isn't true. A tremendous amount of work must have went into designing and painting this picture. Now, let me bring in this little rectangle here, and I want to point something out to you. I'll draw this circle, and then triangle, and this square. There are only three kinds of shapes. Either the shapes are circular, or they're angular, also referred to sometimes as triangular, because these angular shapes have angles, and the triangle here has these angles. Therefore, you can refer to angular shapes as triangular, or just call them angular. I refer to both names actually throughout the course. And then there is another kind of shape that is rectangular. It has this horizontal and vertical appearance. And if you look over here, you see the various shapes. You see actually all three basic kind of shapes. The tables are angular, like this. Angular, of course, because of the angles that the shapes have, just as this triangle has these angles here at the sides. But at the bottom, of course, it has a horizontal line. And then up here, you see the rectangular shapes that Degas uses. Degas' painting also has curving shapes, and you can see one right there, and right here, these little ovals, and even here at the bottom of the bottle, and her hat is a curving shape. Right there, an oval, another oval. So you have a series of ovals, actually, and some are larger, some are smaller, getting a variety of sizes into these shapes, which helps to add interest. There's a curving shape here at her face, like that. So he plays these curved shapes against the rectangular and angular shapes. He creates contrast of shape. Now, the shapes that dominate, and if you look over here where the principles of design are, here's dominance, there needs to be a dominant shape. And it's the angular shape that dominates. Why does it dominate? Whenever you have more of one kind of shape than another, that shape becomes dominant because it becomes preponderant within the composition. There's more of it than any other shape. Also, when the shape becomes larger in size than the other shapes, dominance is established. Dominance can also be established when a shape has a strong value contrast that attracts more attention than all the other shapes because the other shapes don't have that kind of strong value contrast. So there's dominance through repetition, dominance through size, and dominance through strength of contrast. These are things that I'll be repeating throughout the course to remind you of them and to really get you to understand the importance of what I'm telling you so that you'll try to apply them to your work. If you look over here at the principles of design, you'll see alternation. Now, what is alternation? Alternation, of course, refers to an element of design that is alternated, such as, for example, value. You look at Degas' painting right there, you see that the woman has a light value which is placed against a dark background here. However, if you look at the man, the upper portion of the man here, you see that he has a dark value that is placed against a light value. So there's an alternation of light against dark and then dark against light. So again, another principle of design was applied to this painting. There is dominance of size. And over here, where the elements of design are, there's size. The woman dominates in size. She is larger in size than the man. Therefore, there's dominance of size. Back again to the principles of design, and you see repetition over here. Repetition is very important in creating unity. And you can see repetition throughout this painting. Repetition of value, for example, right here. This dark is repeated here, 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 here. The darks are repeated everywhere. Then the lights are also repeated, the light values. So you see a light value here. It's repeated on her dress. It's repeated on the tabletops. And over here and here. They're all light values. And even here on the glass. So there's a repetition of value occurring, establishing the principle of repetition. Now I want to move on to another element of picture making that Degas uses, which can be seen right here, pattern. And when I talk about pattern, I'm referring specifically to the value pattern or value plan of a picture. Basically, this value pattern is a light and some middle value seen against a dark. And you can more clearly see the value pattern when the picture is turned into black and white, like this. And when I reduce it somewhat, you can clearly see the light and middle value against the dark. Here, of course, you can see the light value. Just quickly outlining it. And it's seen against the dark value here and here and here. And then down here, you see a little bit of the middle values. And up here, there's not much middle value. It's mostly light and dark values, creating a strong value pattern. Now let me go back up to actual size, and later in the course you'll be learning more about value patterns. So there's another element that Degas uses, in addition to dominance that I pointed out to you, and repetition, and alternation, line and shape and size and value, and I mentioned unity and harmony that you'll be learning about later on in the course. There's also linking right here. You see, linking. Degas links his shapes. The light shapes and the dark shapes are linked. Take a look over here. When you place a dark shape against another dark shape, you create linking. So here's a dark shape. Now I'll add another dark shape over here, like this. And I'll repeat this in other parts of the course just to remind you of this and to show you other examples in which this dark against dark takes place to create linking. So right here you see that white line. I'll get rid of that space, you see, and now the two dark shapes are linked. And no contour or edge can be seen between two shapes like you see here. The shapes are linked. And if you look over here, let me change this to red. If you look right over here where the man's back is and the back of the seat on which he's sitting, the values are the same or very similar. And therefore, linking occurs right here. Those two shapes, the shape of the back of the seat and the back of the man, are linked together because a dark shape is placed against another dark shape, just like you see here. And what that does is it connects two shapes that otherwise would be separated because they have different values, but here they have the same values or very similar values. And it helps to flatten out the image. That is, it makes it appear more abstract, more two-dimensional. Abstraction is two-dimensional. And it also unifies the shapes. Where there were two separate shapes, there are then one shape, which also helps to create economy. He also does it with the light values, not just the darks. And right here, where the woman's collar is, and the background value, you can see that there is a link between the woman's color and the background, like that. Even though it's just a small area right here, doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be a big area. There's still linkage that is occurring. And you see it over here too, right there. You see, this value is a little bit lighter than this value, but nevertheless, when you squint your eye, they seem to merge together and become one value, and therefore linking occurs. Now, if there was a lighter value here like this, see, I'm making that dark value lighter. Now that value is too light, and linking no longer occurs. So they need to be very similar, or preferably the same value, in order for linking to happen. Now with the light value, right over here, you see this light shape that I'm adding, and then another light shape over here, just as I did with the dark value. And then I'll get rid of that space there, and thereby link the two light values together into one larger overall shape. Thereby I create economy. And, of course, also unity, because where there were two separate shapes, there is now one connected shape, creating unity. Now let me move on to another element of picture making, and I can select any one of these elements here. It really doesn't matter, and it can be found within this great painting. I'll select placement. You need to consider where you're going to place the center of interest. And the center of interest is another one of these elements of picture making that is located right here. Now Degas places the center of interest within this part of the picture area. And all of this is the picture area. And the picture area has a particular shape. In this case, the shape is a rectangle. I wouldn't select a square to do the painting on, because a square is a rather boring shape because it has the same dimensions all around. The height is the same as the width on a square, but on a rectangle you have different dimensions. The width is a different dimension than the height is, and therefore a rectangle format shape is much more interesting than a square is. So I would stick to painting on rectangle shapes rather than square shapes. But sometimes that cannot be avoided if you're an illustrator. For example, the time may come where you might have to paint a picture within a square format shape, but if you can avoid it, avoid the square. Always opt for the rectangular shape. Looking over here, you see picture area, and then down here, format shape. Let me also outline linking, because I covered that already. And the thing about linking is that when you create linking, you also establish what is called passage. And passage is located right here, you see? And that means that the eye can easily pass from one shape to the other, because the value of the shapes are the same or nearly the same. So the eye doesn't stop at the edge of the shape. So right over here, the eye can easily pass from the man to the back of the seat on which he is sitting. And down here, the eye can easily pass from here to the skirt and over like this to the man's trousers. The eye is passing from one shape to another. Thus it's called passage. And it happens with the light shapes as well, right here, where there is this link, as I mentioned earlier, between the collar of the woman's dress and the background. Passage is created like that. The eye passes from the background to the foreground, or from the foreground to the background. So passage is very important if you want to move the eye of the viewer through the painting. If there is a sharp contrast at the edge of a shape, the eye will stop there and not continue. But if there is this linking, then the eye can easily move from one shape to the other, and throughout the painting you can lead the eye of the viewer around the painting, and the viewer won't get stuck in any one particular place where they're not supposed to get stuck. take a look over here. Now I'm going to draw a dark shape again like I did before, but this time I'm going to add a lighter value shape next to it. And what's happening here is that the eye is stopped at the edge of the shape. So let's say the eye is moving across this shape like that, but then it's stopped here because of the contrast that occurs here. The differences between the two values are too great to allow the eye to easily continue on to the next shape. So therefore, if I darken this shape like that, like I did before, and eliminate that contrast at the edge of the shape, now the eye can easily pass from this shape to this one like that. There's nothing stopping it. So to create this kind of compositional movement, as it's referred to, make sure that you establish passage through linking within your compositions. Watch what happens if I change the value over here in the painting from a dark to a lighter value, so that the man has light value pants on. And I think I'll extend it all the way down like that. You see what happens now? The eye travels along this shape, but then it's stopped here by that hard edge. It can't continue on. It's sharp edges, hard edges stop the eye. But as soon as I return the value to a dark one, now the eye can easily pass from one shape to the other. Right over here, you see emphasis. And Degas creates emphasis through a strong value contrast right there. The light value of the woman seen against the dark background creates emphasis. It draws the eye of the viewer to her. So emphasis is very important because through it you can attract attention to the center of interest. Economy, right there, you see, has been established by linkage, as I pointed out to you. By linking two or more shapes together, you wind up with one shape. Therefore, economy is established. You have fewer shapes. And that also helps to create unity, which of course is right up here, one of the principles of design. Probably the most important principle of design next to dominance.